What's going on, guys? It's Jimmy here, and welcome to the It's Jimmy Show, your daily source of news for the fourth stimulus check update and also what is going on in the world today. Several different stimulus items to talk about today, as well as some brand new information on a third vaccine shot. That's right. If you haven't heard this yet, I told you so. Let's jump right in and we will get to that. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss out on updates on the fourth round of stimulus, as there is multiple different provisions on the horizon for the fourth stimulus round and the fourth stimulus check. Don't forget to hit the like button, and here we go. Pharmaceutical company Moderna says its booster shot against the COVID-19 virus could be available by the fall. Moderna CEO Stephanie Bancel said it may submit data on booster shots to federal regulators in the coming months. Just to be clear, they're talking about a third virus shot now, a booster shot to help with the vaccines. I'll talk a little bit about what I think this means going forward, but first, more info on this booster shot. Moderna CEO says, I want to make sure there are boost vaccines available in the fall so that we can protect people as we go into next fall and winter season in the US. I anticipate that in the next year or so, we're going to see a lot of variants. But as more and more people get vaccinated or naturally infected, the pace of the variant is going to slow down and the virus is going to stabilize like you see with the flu. That part is very important, and we'll get to that here in a minute. The National Institute of Health last month began testing booster shots from Moderna against the variant first identified in South Africa that has given public health officials cause for concern compared with previous strains of the virus. The B1351 variant appears to be more contagious and could possibly evade some of the protections generated by the therapeutics and the vaccines. Although evidence has shown current vaccines provide an adequate degree of protection against variants for now. Bancel also told CNBC Moderna wants to eventually have a vaccine that protects against both the seasonal flu and COVID-19. That would protect you for the variant of concern against COVID and the seasonal flu strain. Moderna's booster prediction comes one day after the company announced that their two-dose vaccine was 90% effective 6 months after a person received the second dose. Moderna is working on getting full approval for the vaccine from the FDA, as it only has emergency use authorization at this moment. And honestly, this goes exactly with what I have been saying and what I think is going to happen is that I think that the variants are going to stick around for probably quite a while, and it's going to be similar to a flu shot. If you get a flu shot every year in the fall or whenever you get a flu shot, every year for your flu shot is a slightly different strain for the flu vaccine there, basically. And that's because every year there's slightly different strains of the influenza. Okay, so I personally thought, I've been saying this for a while, that I think that this is how the COVID virus is going to happen, because the variants have already been coming out so swiftly, and the B117 variant is already the dominant strain in the United States. It's actually more cases of that now than the original strain of the virus. So that shows you how fast these things mutate. There's several different strains out there. There's even one that's a double mutated strain. It's a double mutated, and the more it mutates, the more it likely gets away from the initial vaccine that they made for the initial strain. And we're talking about variants that are now doubly mutated. So you get farther and farther away from what that vaccine was made for. And that's why I've said before on the show that I think the vaccine is likely going to become a yearly shot, similar to the flu shot. If you get flu shots, you know they're available every year. Every year when you go in, you get your flu shot. Boom! Me and my wife get flu shots. We have for years because we just believe that it lessens the flu. Sometimes you don't get the flu at all. I actually haven't. I better knock on wood here for this one, but I haven't had the flu in several years. But we get flu shots. It's no big deal. You go in and get a shot. Boom, it's over. But every year it's a slightly different strain. You probably wouldn't even know that. It's not like they tell you that in the shot unless you like look into it. But I think that's how the COVID shot is going to end up. I think it's going to be that likely, unless we get somehow to herd immunity or it's gone completely. Remember, the flu's not gone completely. The flu's been around for many, many years, and I don't know if it'll ever be gone. I just think that Moderna's now talking about a third shot. You get your first two, and now they're saying they already have been testing a booster shot for the variants, and likely I think that is going to evolve into what we will see in the future is that you'll get your first two shots. Your first two shots may actually have different strains on them in the future. And if you haven't got your first two, say you get your first two 6 months from now or something like that. And then I think that you'll likely get a booster shot or an annual shot or something like that going forward because seeing how fast this mutates, I just think it's logical that this is just going to continue. And just like the flu, you don't get a flu shot one time and then you're good forever for the next 10 or 20 years. It just doesn't work like that. You get a flu shot every year. So that's my thoughts. Let me know your thoughts. But Moderna is already testing this booster shot, which would be a third shot for the Moderna vaccine. We'll have to see what Pfizer says in the future, but Pfizer and Moderna vaccines are pretty similar. So I would expect the same thing from them going forward. And honestly, it only makes sense if you just think about it because the main strain in the United States is not even the original strain anymore. So, I mean, going forward, let's fast forward another year from now, we're going to see all types of different strains and dominant strains and triple mutated strains. And I just think that they're going to probably have a yearly vaccine, which if you get the flu shot, it's no big deal. You go in and you get a shot and it's over. Flu shots have been around for many, many years, and they change the strain every year in your flu shot, which would be almost exact same process of what they're going to do for the COVID shot. So think that's what will happen. Let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. And let me know if this changes anything for you. Again, this is just my thoughts, but the Moderna information on a third shot, a booster shot coming out, that you read that in black and white. So they are already testing that and they're going to be seeking approval here in the next few months. So let me know if this changes your thoughts going forward at all. Let's talk stimulus. Several different items on stimulus. We'll start with this one. Homeowners behind on their mortgages could get a reprieve on any foreclosures until 2022. Millions of Americans took advantage of the payment suspension and mortgage forbearance programs both lenders and the federal government rolled out due to the pandemic last year. Talk about that here in a second. But as these emergency programs start to wind down this year, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau wants to put safeguards in place to ensure millions of families aren't forced into foreclosure. A year into the pandemic, about 2.5 million homeowners are still enrolled in some type of mortgage forbearance program, according to the Mortgage Bankers Association data. Yet, with these programs in place, about 5% of homeowners are currently delinquent on their mortgage. This could increase exponentially as forbearance programs start to wind down this fall. Emergency protections for homeowners will start to expire later this year and by the fall if the Biden administration doesn't extend them further, which is a possibility. A flood of borrowers will need assistance from their servicers. The CFPB is proposing changes to the mortgage servicing rules that will ensure servicers and borrowers have the tools and the time to work together to prevent avoidable foreclosures, which disrupts lives, uproots children, and inflicts further costs on those least able to bear them. To help homeowners who are behind on their mortgage, the CFPB is proposing a new rule that would establish a temporary COVID-19 emergency pre-foreclosure review period that would essentially block mortgage servicers from starting the foreclosure process until after December 31st of this year. Now, note that this is just a proposal at this point, but we could continue to see this, and or we could see Biden extend the mortgage foreclosure forbearance and the foreclosure restrictions possibly until the end of the year or until January 1st of next year. Just so you know, I got a really good video on mortgage forbearance, which is basically how you can get up to 12 to 18 months. The government just added an additional 6-month period where you can go on mortgage forbearance with government backed mortgages or loans, which the majority, I think it's like 78% of mortgages are, say, yeah, 78% or something like that, are backed by the federal government on the backside through the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac program. So you might not even know it. Your loan could be with Bank of America or Fifth Third or First Third or any bank like that. But on the backside, it's guaranteed by Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, which are government agencies, and thus they're backed by the government. Okay, if your loan is backed by the government, you can qualify for mortgage forbearance for 12 months and now an additional 6 months. I have a video I did with more details on that I'll link to you at the end of this video that you can watch if you want to get more information on that. But basically, as long as you do it correctly and you ask your loan servicer all the right questions so you know exactly what you're doing, because each loan servicer or mortgage company could have different rules and different variables. But this program is supposed to work where you won't have any interest or late fees, and you won't have to pay it in a one lump sum at the end of the mortgage. Okay. Every bank's different, but that is how the government backed ones are supposed to be. But again, the most important thing is you have to talk to your mortgage provider to and make sure you know all the ins and all the outs before you get into this. Or if you're already into this, you need to figure out all the details. So I'll link you to a more detailed video on that at the end of this video. Just for reference, in this article I already happen to have up, homeowners who are entered into mortgage forbearance under federal relief efforts are limited to anywhere from 12 to 18 months of payment deferral, depending on when they started their forbearance period and what type of home loan they have. As a result, many homeowners will be coming out of forbearance in 2021. Under the provisions of the CARES Act, you won't have to repay your excused monthly mortgage payments in a lump sum right away. Instead, your loan servicer can require forbearance repayment in one of the following ways. Require borrowers to repay past due mortgage payments within 6 to 12 months of the forbearance period ending. Extend the mortgage term and add excused payments onto the back end of the mortgage. This is the one you would want to go with, or probably one of the best choices here, because basically, if you didn't pay your loan, say for a year, and then you're coming out of the forbearance, you basically just pick back up, start paying again, and your normal parent payments start. You didn't accumulate any interest or penalties, and all they do is they just add that 1 year you didn't pay onto the back half of the loan. So basically, you got to have a year for free staying in the home. You still have to pay that 1 year, but you're going to pay it on the back half. So if you had 10 years left on your mortgage, you still have 10 years left on your mortgage because you didn't pay any money, but you're just shifting that 10 years 1 year later, 12 months later, if that makes sense. The other option you can do is extend your mortgage term to 30 years, or they actually just had a new provision come out about this, or 40 years for Fannie Mae or Freddie Mac loans, and recalculate the monthly mortgage payments to be the same as or lower than it was before forbearance. Now, doing this option would extend your mortgage to 30 years or 40 years. In fact, I might need to move the camera up here so you can see this. But I would caution you against that, because then you're going to basically, if you don't want to pay off your home, then you can do that if you want to have just the lowest payments ever. But this will add on a lot of interest if you go with this option, because you're going to be paying for more years of, you're spreading it out over more years. So you'll be paying more interest over more years. This is probably the option that I would go with if I was in forbearance, because basically it just means you got 12 to 18 months for free, and you just add the mortgage term on to the end and you go back about your business. A new study that finds that a fourth stimulus check could spring 7.3 million people out of poverty, as the momentum for a fourth stimulus check to be included in this infrastructure slash stimulus package. We don't even have the second part of the infrastructure package released yet. That is supposed to focus on the human infrastructure, and we will likely see a fourth stimulus check added into either the second half of this bill or the entire bill if they combine them into one and pass them with just one reconciliation package, reconciliation card before all is said and done. We're starting to see more and more articles and support and study for a fourth stimulus check. And remember, the Democrats are likely going to use data like this when they go about adding a fourth stimulus check, or the monthly recurring stimulus checks that over 75 different Democrats in the House and Senate have actually written a public support letter, one from the House and one from the Senate, urging President Biden to include monthly recurring stimulus checks in this next infrastructure package. A new study comes out that 65% of Americans support a new monthly recurring stimulus check until the pandemic is over, which is exactly what this bill from the Senators Ed Markey and Elizabeth Warren are pushing President Biden for $2,000 monthly stimulus checks until the pandemic is over. We're continuing to see growing support from both Americans for a package or a check like this, but also from Democratic lawmakers. And the Democrats, we say Democrats because this next package, the infrastructure slash stimulus package, is likely going to be passed the exact same way the third stimulus check package was passed, with the reconciliation process. The Senate parliamentarian ruled that they can pass two more stimulus packages this year and then more next year. In fact, the fiscal year for next year starts in October. But they can pass at least two more packages this year with the reconciliation process. And when you listen to the Republicans and Mitch McConnell, the leader of the Republicans in the Senate minority leader, Mitch McConnell talks about this infrastructure package like it's the worst thing you've ever seen ever, which is kind of, I feel that the Republicans are just putting on their, I call it the Republican blockade, where they just don't want to show support for anything that comes from the Biden administration, because Republicans are typically in favor of infrastructure, and they're basically just finding, at least Republicans in Congress. If you're a Republican viewer, let me know if you see differently with this infrastructure slash stimulus package on the horizon. But at least Republicans in Congress, we're likely not going to see a single one of them vote for this infrastructure package. They're just finding anything wrong with it that they can, and basically saying we're not going to vote for it because of this, that, or the other thing. I've already debunked the myth that only 6% of the infrastructure package is actual infrastructure. We went through that in a recent video. What they're talking about is 6% of the money goes towards roads and bridges. So you got to be very careful when you see those statements, that just like in the third stimulus check package, there was I'm not Republican or Democrat. I'm just telling you how these statements go. So in the third stimulus check package, there was a Republican statement that said only 9% of the money from the third stimulus check package is going to fight COVID. And that's right. 9% of the money was just going to fight COVID. It was for vaccines and distributions. But that didn't include the stimulus check and the child income tax credits, the money for mortgage assistance and rental assistance, all the money for the economic part of the recovery, the money going to you. The $1,400 stimulus checks wasn't included in that 9%. And it's almost the same situation with them talking about the infrastructure package, that only 6% of it goes towards infrastructure. What they actually say is 6% goes towards roads. Okay. And yes, that is technically correct. 6% of it goes towards roads and bridges. all the other money. In fact, here's just a quick breakdown, as you can see here. So, what they talk about is that 6% going to infrastructure is this part: $621 billion into roads and bridges. I think they actually further dissect that. It's like just they talk about just the money for roads and bridges, okay, and then they don't count this, and this. So they say 6% of the money goes towards roads and bridges for infrastructure. But if we look at this, okay, there's $621 billion. There's also public transit, there's airports, electrical vehicle development, ports. We have $400 billion to care for the elderly and disabled Americans. Do you consider that infrastructure? $300 billion to improve drinking water infrastructure. They're not including that. I mean, drinking water infrastructure, it's literally right there in the wording. Broadband access and upgrading electrical grids. I mean, electrical grids is infrastructure. I mean, we think most notably about what just happened in Texas with their electrical grid failing in the winter. I mean, that's pretty much the definition of infrastructure. Putting $300 billion into building and retrofitting affordable housing, and along with constructing and upgrading schools. I mean, housing is infrastructure, I would think. $580 billion into American manufacturing. So again, um, all this, do you consider all this infrastructure? So when they talk about the 6% of the money goes only to roads and bridges, they're talking about just this part. They're not talking about any of this other parts. So you got to be very careful when you hear a statement like that, because they're basically saying, oh yeah, only 9% of the third stimulus check package bill goes to COVID. Well, yeah, that's just the part that goes to COVID. That's not counting the stimulus checks or the actual stimulus in there, okay? That's not counting the economic part of the recovery. So just be very careful when you see statements like that, whether it's coming from the Democrats or Republicans. A lot of both sides, they make very they pick a very specific thing out of a bill, or against some what somebody will say, and they'll bring a very specific point, but I consider it a half truth, because yeah, it's true that only 6% of the money goes towards roads and bridges, but there's a lot more to infrastructure before all is said and done. And they haven't even got around to the second part of the infrastructure bill, the human infrastructure, as Bernie Sanders calls it. And we're likely going to see stimulus checks added in there, monthly recurring stimulus checks possibly. They want to add in Medicare expansion, free dental care coverage, free hearing aid coverage. That's part of the human infrastructure. And I think most people would consider the Social Security and the Medicare programs of America the infrastructure of America. Yeah, it's not physical. You can't knock on it like a road you could or a bridge you could. But Social Security and Medicare are two of the largest infrastructure programs of our country, and they support our seniors and our disabled and our veterans and just so many people. It's the human infrastructure. So before all is said and done, you're going to see a lot of people complaining about that, and they're likely just going to pass this bill with only Democratic votes and through the reconciliation process. So I'll keep you up to date with everything, all these stimulus items on the horizon. If you're new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below so you don't miss out on new upcoming episodes of our show. New videos come out every day at 10 a.m., 3 p.m., 8 p.m., and 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Make sure to click the bell icon to all notifications down below after subscribing so you get reminder notifications for the first 3 videos of the day. You can click this top video here, which is my newest stimulus check video next. And this video is more information about mortgage forbearance, how it works, how to get the additional 6 months of coverage, all more information about mortgage forbearance. So click on one of those videos next. Thanks, guys, and I will see you in the next video.